From 1913 to the present, Grand Central Terminal has been serving passengers traveling from various places in New York, Connecticut, and beyond. Besides being a world-class commuter hub for hundreds of thousands of passengers, it's an iconic landmark with a rich history of wealth, incredible engineering, and survival in the busy Manhattan landscape. In the present, Grand Central Terminal is the home of Metro-North Commuter Railroad, where most trains east of the Hudson River terminate here. The Hudson, Harlem, and New Haven lines connect commuters to destinations in New York and Connecticut. Grand Central Terminal also has limited Amtrak service when the Empire connection to Penn Station is under repair, forcing Amtrak trains to divert to Grand Central. Unlike its sister station, New York's Pennsylvania Station, or Penn Station for short, Grand Central Terminal has 3 times the amount of tracks for trains. It has 67 tracks with 44 platforms on 2 levels, which are able to accommodate a large number of electric trains and dual-mode diesel locomotives with push-pull coaches. The third rail provides power for electric trains and dual-mode diesel locomotives, as diesel-only locomotives are forbidden for safety and health reasons. It also has a subway station that serves the 4, 5, 6, 7, and a shuttle to Times Square. It has many restaurants as well as retail stores including an Apple store, bakeries, a Shake Shack, and many fancy restaurants. Grand Central Terminal goes by a number of names including Grand Central, the Terminal, and its code names of GCT and NYG. It is also known as Grand Central Station, which refers to the U.S. Postal Service and the New York City subway. Grand Central Terminal has an estimated number of 750,000 visitors every day and the second most visited place in the greater New York City area. In this film, we will explore the history surrounding Grand Central Terminal and train travel in the United States.
Grand Central.
In the early 1800s, trade and banking played a central role in New York's economic engine, which created an incentive for new business and people alike. Economic growth created prosperity, which fueled more economic growth. The economy centered around the development and existence of railroads as a response to the city's expansion. Railroads were responsible for carrying 2 types of goods: passengers and freight. As time went on, these services became more popular. By the 1830s, New York City had its first railroad line which connected Prince Street to the Harlem River, which played a central role in the expansion of New York City from lower Manhattan to spots that were further north. Although railroads provided economic profit and people to the New York City area, pollution became a major complaint among residents because of steam locomotives. In 1854, the city came forward with the decision to ban steam locomotives below 42nd Street. Instead of having steam locomotives hauling passenger coaches directly into Manhattan, horses towed the passenger coaches the last few miles south. Even with these restrictions, the 3 railroads, the Hudson, Harlem, and New Haven railroads focused on expansion. All 3 railroads came to a decision to share a new transit hub, which in turn saved money. This new transit hub will be located on 42nd Street on the east side of Manhattan. The new terminal was known as Grand Central Depot and opened its doors in 1871. There were 3 towers, which represented the Hudson, Harlem, and New Haven lines. However, This new infrastructure wasn't enough, and in the next 30 years, a new annex of Grand Central Depot doubled its size. This still cannot keep up with the demand as rail traffic quadrupled. One individual who helped Grand Central Terminal into its modern form is Cornelius Vanderbilt. He was America's first tycoon and enjoyed the sense of power and wealth. When he was only 16 years old, he launched a ferry boat service to Staten Island. Among other accomplishments, he built a vast shipping network via the Atlantic coast, Hudson River, and beyond. He decided to make a transition between ships to train travel. He made the transition through the act of buying stock in local railroads, which led to a massive transportation network and a powerful empire, which helped bring New York's infrastructure into the future and reshaping the region by expanding rail service. Although Grand Central Depot was a marvel back in 1871, it struggled to meet the growing demands going into the 20th century. The rail tunnels were unable to handle the demand, and the railroad decided to look for solutions to yet again upgrade its infrastructure. The railroad launched a design competition in 1903 in which 4 engineering firms entered the competition. The firms that entered were Samuel Huckle Jr., Reed and Stem, Daniel Burham, and McKim, Mead and White. Out of the 4 participants, Reed and Stem were selected. Side and an incline-like roadway outside that wrapped around the terminal to associate the northern and southern parts of Park Avenue. Although this proposal seemed promising, the railroad needed more answers and ideas to be able to continue with this proposal. As a result of this, they hired another architecture firm to take a second look at it, Warren and Wetmore, which added proposals to Reed and Stem's design, which proposed 3 massive arches. Although these 2 firms had a troubled relationship as associated architects, they managed to come up with a final design that successfully combined the ideas of both firms. In 1902, another idea came to the picture: electrification. This came as a result of a train collision in the Park Avenue tunnel caused by poor visibility due to smoke. This increased the demand for electric train service into Manhattan. In 1903, construction began of Grand Central Terminal along with the electrification of its tracks and went deep into Manhattan's bedrock, an average depth of 30 feet below street level. In spite of the construction, all service continued. In 1913, Grand Central Terminal opened to the public on Sunday, February 12, 1913 at 12:01 a.m. More than 150,000 people visited the new terminal on its opening day. Even though some construction was incomplete, the modern Grand Central Terminal that we know came to existence and encouraged more development in the New York City area. These included the Yale Club and the Biltmore Hotel. In the 1920s, a new form of engineering came to light in New York City. Warehouses began to disappear in favor of skyscrapers, such as the Lincoln Building and the Chrysler Building. When the Hotel Commodore opened its doors in 1919, along with the Gray Bar Building nearby in 1927, they had direct passageways from Grand Central Terminal's main concourse. Beginning in the 1930s, Grand Central Terminal also had its own attractions, such as an art gallery, an art school, a rail history museum, a movie theater, and temporary exhibitions. During the presidency of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he had his own private rail car and secret passage to hide the fact that he had polio. The private rail car and secret passage still exists today, however, its location will not be revealed to the public. By 1947, over 65 million people have traveled by train at Grand Central Terminal, which is nearly 40% of the US population. However, during the 1950s, the future of train travel would change dramatically. After the Second World War, Boeing gained an enormous reputation for military aircraft. These included the B-47 Stratojet and the B-52 Stratofortress. From 1949 to 1950, they embarked on studies for a new jet transport and wanted a design for both the military and civilian aviation markets. They studied many models and eventually came to the Boeing 367-80, which was a prototype for the first American commercial jet, the Boeing 707. After successful tests of the prototype, models went into production by 1957, received certification, and made its first commercial flight by 1958. As air travel became more popular for its faster speeds, rail travel became less and less popular. This led to questions about the future of Grand Central Terminal. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, New York City saw an increase in crime and smaller budgets, which took a toll on Grand Central Terminal. Supporters rallied around the terminal and fought back against the city of New York. On August 2, 1967, the Landmarks Preservation Commission of the City of New York was created in response to the demolition of the nearby Pennsylvania Station. The demolition of Penn Station is seen as a mistake in the modern day, but may have saved Grand Central Terminal from seeing the same fate. They designated Grand Central Terminal as a landmark with protection under the law. Even though it was guaranteed safety from demolition, it was only worthy for the moment. In 1968, Penn Central proposed a building that would be on top of Grand Central Terminal. This would destroy many parts of the terminal, including a section of the main concourse. When the city of New York decided to block this proposal from happening, Penn Central filed an $8 million lawsuit against them. Among the supporters who rallied against changes to Grand Central included city leaders, former First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, and preservationist Brendan Gill.
I think if we don't care about our past, we can't have very much hope for our future. And we've all heard that it's too late, or that it has to happen, or that it's inevitable. But I don't think that's true. Because I think if there is a great effort, even if it's at the 11th hour, you can succeed. And I think, and I know that that's what we'll do. Thank you.
Although Grand Central was saved for a second time, there was plenty of work that needed to be done. Decades of poor maintenance caused the roof to leak, cracks in the structure, and rusted steel. Pollution, dirt, and commercial advertisements made it harder for natural light to come through. By the late 1970s and 1980s, commuter railroads in New York were struggling economically. Penn Central went bankrupt, and as a result, it was merged along with other railroads into Conrail in 1976. In 1982, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority took control of the Hudson, Harlem, and New Haven lines. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority and the Connecticut Department of Transportation formed the Metro-North Commuter Railroad on January 1st, 1983. Metro-North was highly successful at rebuilding the railroads into a modern transportation network. Grand Central Terminal was renovated by architects from Beyer Blinder Bell and ex-retail specialist William Jackson Ewing to prepare a final draft of his master plan to address Grand Central Terminal. In 1990, a public hearing addressed a $425 million master plan for the terminal, and it was adopted by the MTA. Besides this decision, $160 million in additional money was used in structural maintenance, utility upgrades, and improvements to the main concourse. In 1998, the last parts of construction came into play. It allowed the cleaning of the main concourse sky ceiling. As renovations and restorations continued under the plan, it generated over 2,000 jobs in New York State. It allowed for celebration of Grand Central Terminal that has gained both national and international media attention. This led to a new chapter of this New York City landmark. Besides improvements to Grand Central Terminal, Metro North upgraded its infrastructure, including additional electrification and new rolling stock. They extended electrification on the Harlem line from North White Plains to Brewster North, now known as Southeast. Metro North upgraded their signals and trains to support cab signaling. When it came to their fleet, Metro North replaced their aging electric trains, diesel locomotives, and passenger coaches with modern equipment. From the 1980s to the 2000s, Metro North purchased new push-pull coaches, as well as General Electric P32 ACDM electro-diesel locomotives, which are capable of switching to pure electric power for direct service to Grand Central Terminal from areas of the system that do not have third rail. These replace many FL9 and F10 locomotives which were built during the 1940s and 1950s, which were no longer able to operate on third rail. In the 2000s, Metro North purchased M7A electric multiple units to phase out older trains such as the M1As and the ACMUs. In 2008, Brookville BL20GH locomotives began to replace the remainder of the FL9s and F10s on the Wassaic, Danbury, and Waterbury branches. In 2011, Metro North began to replace its aging M2, M4, and M6 electric multiple units on the New Haven line with the M8, which can operate on both third rail and overhead catenary. It has ordered M9 electric multiple units to replace the M3As on the Hudson and Harlem lines. Metro North is currently installing positive train control on all their trains and tracks throughout the system to prevent train crashes. The history of Grand Central Terminal continues on as the MTA finishes the most rigorous engineering project in the country, known as East Side Access. Metro North's sister railroad, the Long Island Railroad, has 11 passenger branches that provide commuter service in Queens, Nassau, and Suffolk counties to destinations in Queens, Manhattan, and Brooklyn. The Long Island Railroad currently uses Penn Station on 34th Street as a terminus for service into New York City. Penn Station is known for being creepy, unsanitary, and plagued by service problems that disrupt the commute for hundreds of thousands of people. Although Penn Station is being rebuilt, commuters still need a second option. East Side Access will be completed in 2022 and will give commuters on the LIRR a choice between Penn Station on the west side of Manhattan and Grand Central on the east side of Manhattan. The Long Island Railroad will have its own terminal underneath the existing Metro North tracks and will have the capacity to store 8 electric trains. This will save commuters up to 40 minutes in travel time who work on the east side of Manhattan. This will also allow freeing up space at Penn Station for trains on the Metro North New Haven line. Grand Central Terminal is one of the most successful commuter hubs in the country and a major tourist attraction for hundreds of thousands of people. The next chapter of Grand Central Terminal with Manhattan's East Side Access project will still continue to bring commuters and tourists together to a place that represents a long history of wealth, combined with incredible engineering, which survived the near demolition of this magnificent structure in the Manhattan landscape.